Okay, so we know famous illustrators and directors and artists and other sculptors and painters. So if you take a look at all of these, I'm sure you know their names. There's Tim Burton, Michelangelo, Anthony Hopkins, Leonardo da Vinci, Vincent van Gogh, and Alfred Hitchcock. Very famous names in the artistic community. Something you may not know though, and just let this sink in for a minute, that they're all neurodivergent. So what does neurodivergency actually mean? Well, let's break it down. So simply put, neurodivergency just means the brain works differently than what is considered normal or typical. It typically affects emotions, communications, and relationships, and so much more. Since neurodivergency is an umbrella term, some diagnoses that fall under it can include autism, ADHD, dyslexia, OCD, stuff like that. That can affect how you think, how your brain is wired, and how you feel things. So some terms to just know within this community, because there's a lot, and they all kind of mean the same thing, but they do have some nuances to them which are very important. So neurodiversity, it's just a difference in brain functions, which is the definition up there, obviously. Neurotypical is how the brain functions that fall under a normal or typical pattern of the average population. So your age group, your gender group, your anything, like you could be 5 and have the mental capacity of a 2-year-old or have the mental capacity of a 5-year-old. That's what neurodiversity is. If you're neurotypical, you have the mental capacity of your age or higher, not lower. Neurodiverse just refers to the concept that differs in brain functions and cognitive abilities. So how you think, how you feel, and how you move around will affect that. That's what neurodiverse means. So very similar definitions to each, but they do have their nuances, which are important to recognize. So how do I know this, and what actually makes me qualified to talk about this? Well, I have autism. Shocker, right? I also have ADHD, anxiety, depression, OCD, and sensory processing disorder. So I'm sure we all know what the rest of that means, but sensory processing disorder is the way I feel things and the way I react to touch, sense, smell, hearing, stuff like that. So I don't like the feeling of shirts with a tag. I wear my socks inside out because I hate the seam. So I have seamless socks because I don't like the sensory, which is an actual diagnosis which you get diagnosed for. You may have sensory issues, but that doesn't mean you have sensory processing disorder. So a little more background into my life. Both my parents are social workers. My mom works in a special education school in the Bronx. She deals with kids who have an IQ of 70 and below. And my dad works with the courts. But what makes this important is they started to notice some signs that I struggled with. So I struggled with making friends, engaging with people my own age. That was a huge issue for me. And I struggled with communicating my emotions and regulating them, which has gotten better over the years, thank God. I was diagnosed with ADHD and anxiety at a very early age. So I was tested around the age of 2 and 3 because my parents saw that I had some issues. Turns out I had them, and I still do. So I started to take art therapy. And art therapy, it helped for a while. It really did. But after a while, it just kind of felt too structured, and I wasn't able to express how I really felt, which didn't help. So I started to create my own art. So if we want to fast forward to junior year, last year, for all of us, I was tested again, but this time I was tested for autism, and I was diagnosed with it. It didn't shock me, but I did start to panic, and I couldn't breathe, and I started to spiral, even though I wasn't surprised. It still freaked me out. But then I remember the names that I previously mentioned. Van Gogh, Tim Burton, all those people, they were neurodivergent. They all had some type of differences that made them brilliant. So could there be a pattern there? And I actually did start to notice a pattern. Each of those brilliant minds, and many more that I didn't mention, they all turned to art. I also realized that in their time, people might have considered them weird or quirky or not typical, which is a huge issue. But as time progressed and as we started to notice the advancements that they made in the artistic community, we started to know that they were brilliant, and I started to calm down a little bit because maybe I could be too. So I actually wanted to look for a new art form, and if any of you are like disgusted by blood and gore and stuff, I apologize in advance. I found special effects makeup. So that's just some of the makeup I've done, and it helped me become anything I wanted, mostly scary because I do prefer that, it's more fun to do. I get to do anatomy, which I'm very into, and it's just cool to put things together in a way. And it helped me redefine what normalcy actually means. So normalcy to you might not be what normalcy is to me, hence my niche. Normal to you might be watching sports or reading a book or drawing or anything that typical kids might do. Mine happens to be blood and gore. Fun, right? So this has helped me communicate in honestly so many ways. Might not see from these pictures, but it helped me express something that I couldn't express out loud because I didn't feel like I was allowed to. So these are just some pictures from my APR portfolio. I did it on autism and girls specifically because we get misdiagnosed. So each of these pictures represent something that I felt, and I don't want to generalize, but probably most of you have felt, even if you're not neurodivergent. You've probably felt out of place, you've probably overthink at bed, you've probably been labeled as something that you're not, which is what I did all of here. And having to mask, like masking is when you have to figure out how to relay your social setting, so I could be in school and I'm not going to be my full self because my full self might be too much for a school setting. So you might have felt like you had to do that. We all have to, but autism is when you have to do it to an extreme. So through the art, I've had to learn how to communicate, and it's been a rough couple of goes, but I got there, still going. And all the people who I mentioned before, Van Gogh, Tim Burton, every single one of them, they all had to find their language, and the majority of them have turned to art. So if that's a reason, if all of them have turned to art, why would that be? Well, art has given us a space, a safe place in a fast and often loud world that can be very overwhelming for us. Art also gives us a voice when words seem to fail or fall short, or when people don't listen. And that happens a lot when you're autistic because people consider you weird, quirky, stuff like that. And there's actually some research that supports this. So there's a lot up there, but I'm just going to paraphrase. So Yitz Dina, on artistic ability and autism. That was the study. So your right brain compensates for your left brain. Your right brain is full of the creativity, and your left side of the brain is full of the analytical writing, stuff like that. Because the right enhances the creativity, and it also allows for memory and detail and more attention to detail, which is very important if you're into art. It also allows for sensory sensitivity. So because of sensory sensitivity in the autistic community, you're more likely to pay better attention to detail and stuff like that. Also, the wiring in your brain, it's unique and powerful. So the differences in our brain chemistry may not be considered normal, but it does help when we're creating art. So art also can bridge how we feel feelings and how we express them. It often translates words that we can't say aloud. And then art is what existence and identity and voice, that's what art gives us. It gives us something that we can relay and communicate and find peace within. So volunteering, I met a nonverbal kid, mom school, and I whispered to him because he was playing with a robot, and I wanted to make sure that it was okay. So I started to paint his face, and he ended up smiling. And art did that. Literally no words did that. No words. He ended up smiling, and the smile said, "Here I am, I'm here." So that moment taught me that the future belongs to the wanderers, the deeply thinkers, the quiet rebels, the too much of the kids, and who turn silence into like masterpieces. So art has given me translation, freedom, stuff that I can express fully when I wasn't able to at first. So in a world that's like starving for connection, why do we treat art like dessert when we should be treating it as something that should be gate-kept? So just overall, try to be yourself and like be loud in a world that's afraid of volume, and like be color in a world that's afraid of color overall. Thank you.